Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Parshas Naso, we have the dedication of the tabernacle and the dedication of the altar of sacrifice. And the verse says, "Vayehi b'yom kalois Moshe lahakim es hamishkan." And it was on the day that Moshe Rabbeinu concluded erecting the tabernacle. He anointed it, he sanctified it, and all of its vessels, and the altar of sacrifice, and all of its vessels, they were anointed and sanctified. Rashi asked the question that we know it was Bezalel, Aholiab, and all of those who were given a heart filled with wisdom, who actually fashioned the vessels for the tabernacle. And yet the verse seems to attribute the conclusion of the tabernacle to that of Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu finished erecting, the whole tabernacle was done. Moshe finished it. Rashi responds and says that this is because Lefisha Mosa Nafshe Olav, Moshe Rabbeinu, he dedicated himself to see that every single detail of this tabernacle would be formed exactly as God commanded. So Moshe Rabbeinu was supervising every single activity that was necessary in forming the frame, and forming the foundation, the adonim, and forming the curtains, and forming all of the sacred vessels. And then Rashi tells us that we find similarly by King David, in which it says that King David, he invested himself in regard to the building of the Holy Temple in Yerushalayim. Even though King David didn't build it, it was done by his son, King Solomon. Nevertheless, we see that the verse in the book of Kings says, "Behold the house, your house, David," meaning that this is considered your house, but he didn't build it. However, he invested himself to see that it would be done, and done appropriately. That's what the verse is referring to when it says, Moshe Rabbeinu completed the tabernacle. What exactly is the verse telling us? Is this a testimonial to Moshe and to King David? Is this to tell us, look how wonderful you did? I mean, everything in the Torah is teaching us something. What exactly is being taught over here? Immediately following this, we find that the leaders of each tribe, they came to Moshe Rabbeinu with a donation and offerings by which they wanted to dedicate the altar of sacrifice, the Chanukas HaMizbeach. And the verse states that every single one of the 12 leaders of each tribe brought the identical offering, the same amount of animals for the burnt offering, the sin offering, for the peace offering, a vessel in which was used a cup, and there was a spoon that held that held the ketores, and it held other, and a plate, a bowl, and everything they brought was absolutely identical. We have 6 verses for each tribe. That's 72 verses in which it's a repetition over and over and over. They brought the same silver bowl, the same silver cup, and it tells you the weight. Everything was identical. The Torah could have told us what was brought with one or two of the tribes, and then said, and this one brought the same, and that one brought the same. But no, the Torah elaborates, in which we have a total of 72 verses. What's the purpose of this elaboration? Sages explain that the Nisim, they understood that this Mizbeach, this altar of sacrifice, was a means by which Klal Yisrael, man and God, would be able to achieve shalom, peace. That if man would have sinned, and that sin acts as a barrier between our Creator and ourselves, we can achieve an atonement. What the Torah is revealing to us by Moshe and as Rashi says by King David, is not just to tell us how wonderful they were, what a great contractor Moshe was. He was on top of every detail and it was built to perfection. But rather it's telling us that Moshe wanted to make sure that everything was done with the right intention, that everything is done not for our glory, but for the sole purpose of fulfilling the will and the word of Hashem. Hashem commanded that we have this tabernacle that will house his divine presence. Moshe Rabbeinu invested his entire being with his thought that everything should be done exclusively for the sanctity and the purity of fulfilling Hashem's word. Why? Because that will imbue this structure with that sanctity and purity that makes it into a temple. What is it? Just a fancy structure that's beautiful? No. It is something which is able to house the divine presence. And that is not found within matter. That comes within the thought, the purity of one's heart. And Moshe Rabbeinu knew that he was the one who would be responsible to see that this purity of thought would invest itself and manifest itself through every article, so that this indeed could become the tabernacle. King David did the same, that it could become the temple in which the divine presence would rest amongst Klal Yisrael and humanity. Talmud says, if Moshe Rabbeinu would have entered the land of Israel and built the holy temple, it never would have been destroyed. It would have been so sacred that no transgression, nothing, no human being could have destroyed that temple. This is because Moshe Rabbeinu took human thought and human deed and transformed it into an energy of purity and sanctity that formed this tabernacle, this temple. That's what the Torah is revealing to us, that based upon our thoughts, that is how the home, the community will take shape. The Nesiim, understanding that this altar of sacrifice is a means of connecting with our Creator and cleansing ourselves from transgression and bringing us back to our bond of shalom. They did this not only with the proper thought, but they said to each other, let us bring an offering, let us dedicate. And I'm certain there were different opinions. Let's bring this and let's bring that. You bring this, you bring that. And it was from the tribe of Yisachar who said, let us bring the identical offering. Why? So we will show the unity, the solidarity. We will show that we are one entity. There is no envy, but rather we are bound together as one, that there is shalom. There is peace amongst the tribes, there's peace amongst the leaders, and this will form the very basis and foundation, the pillar upon which the temple will be built, the pillar of sanctity of peace. That's why the Torah elaborates with so many verses, because there are never enough verses in the Torah to emphasize the great blessing of peace. And perhaps that's why this particular section follows the mitzvah of the Birkas Kahanim, the blessing that the Kahanim do to this very day. They lift their hands and they express the blessing in which God will give a blessing to Klal Yisrael. And as we know, what is the exclamation point of that blessing? V'yaseim lecha shalom, you shall have peace. This is what the Nesiim did. As Moshe and King David imbued the temple with such sanctity and purity of thought, the holiness, the spirituality, they too imbued the altar with the spirituality of Shalom. We live in a community, and as a community, we work together. And we have a congregation and we have a board of directors. And sometimes there are discussions and debates and there's dialogue and there are decisions. And these decisions are man-made. They're not from Sinai. They're not part of our Shulchan Aruch, but these are human beings who sincerely have the best interests of our community at heart. And they express their opinions. We might agree, we might disagree. We might feel that their opinion is absurd, but nevertheless, we must respect their opinions and we must realize that their opinions exist. And if a board makes a decision and tries to come to a compromise by definition means it's not going to make everyone happy. It means that we're all going to be a little bit unhappy, uncomfortable. Maybe our feelings are not going to be soothed. Maybe we'll be a little offended. But this is the decision of our community. And if that's the case, then we have to all put aside our own particular feelings and say, you know what? This is in the best interest of our temple, of our Mishkan, of our synagogue. This one sits here, this one sits there. Does it really matter? Thank God we're healthy. Thank God we can come together. Thank God we can daven and pray. Thank heavens we have this opportunity. Maybe the decision will change tomorrow. Who knows what new information will come in regard to wearing a mask, not wearing a mask? I don't know. But if this is the decision that our board has made, those who are not vaccinated, please, you must keep your mask on within the premises of the building at all times and respect the feelings of others as we expect them to respect your feelings. But put aside all of our personal interests and we follow the decision of our board. Well-intentioned people who give of their time, their energy, and they give of their means, and they are investing themselves to try to see that we too will have a foundation of shalom upon which we can build our temple, that God's presence will be there to hear our prayers, that we should be worthy of having shalom, not just here in our community. We're blessed with shalom. There should be something more important. Shalom for Klal Yisrael. Shalom in Eretz Yisrael. Shalom so that a Jew doesn't have to walk down the street and think of what this one might be saying or that one might be saying, but rather we should have shalom and we should realize that the ultimate shalom is found only as we revere, observe, and love the Torah that God has given us. And thereby, we show our love for Hashem. We should love the Lord our God with all of our hearts, even if it means compromising occasionally. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay Jewish, and have a wonderful Shabbos.